one or two other things here. It's got little sides here, but it's cool stuff. Many organisms have developed all kinds of cool things that interfere with nerve cell function. Think of this. If you happen to get bit by a neurotoxic snake, like a coral snake, that's the only one we have in this part of the country, or if you go out, a cobra will do that, a sea snake, and the worst of the worst, the kraits. Those are found in Asia, especially Southeast Asia. Okay, so venomous snakes, they have they produce molecules that affect the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter at the nerve-muscle junction. So if you block acetylcholine in one way or another, what's going to happen is the nerves cannot send signals to the muscle cells, and you're paralyzed, and you die of respiratory paralysis. So they affect the acetylcholine system. Many of them produce venoms that prevent the acetylcholine release. In other words, they prevent the vesicles from fusing with the cell membrane. Others are enzymes that go in and chew up the acetylcholine in the synapse, so it never makes it to the acetylcholine receptors in the dendrites. Still others bind to and block the acetylcholine receptors, so when the neurotransmitter comes by, it finds its binding sites already occupied. The nastiest, most venomous snake in the world, called the banded krait, you find in India and Southeast Asia. It looks like a garter snake. It's about this big, but it packs a mean punch. It has all three kinds of venoms. So if one of them doesn't kill you, the other two will. You get bit by one of these guys, you're toast in 2 hours or less. It's nasty stuff. It was a nemesis of people out in Vietnam. Okay, so you have these neurotoxic snakes that usually affect acetylcholine. Now, if you happen to get bit by or stung by a scorpion, many scorpion venoms contain a neurotoxin that blocks the voltage-gated potassium channels. So that stops the action potential from happening. And some spiders have that too. There is this fish called in Japan the fugu fish. It's a puffer fish. It's a delicacy in Japan, but there's a little problem. In order to serve fugu, it turns out the puffer fish is loaded up with a lethal neurotoxin in everywhere in its body except the muscle flesh. So the only way a person can eat this and live to tell the tale the next day is to have the flesh and everything else cleaned completely out. So in Japan, to serve fugu, which costs about $200 a plate, you have to be a state licensed fugu chef. It's a 2-year apprenticeship. And you have, before the state licensing board, your final exam. You have to clean in front of them a fugu puffer fish perfectly. You get one shot at it. If you don't pass, you never get another shot. Of course, on the other hand, your customers never get another shot either. Okay, and as a matter of fact, by the way, you can find puffer fish of different species across the Caribbean and coastal waters. Do not eat them. They contain this toxin too, but not as much. So they can be dangerous to consume. And this toxin, which we find puffer fish as an example, it's called tetrodotoxin. And it binds to and specifically blocks the voltage-gated sodium channels. Once again, stopping the action potential. You die of respiratory paralysis, and if you have enough of it, you actually lose consciousness as well. Okay, Tetrodotoxin is so nasty that 1/2 of a milligram of the stuff is enough to kill a person. Interesting thing, because the fugu pufferfish has a very small genome. It's 1/10 the size of other vertebrate genomes, but still has 20-some-odd thousand genes. A bunch of gene sequencers decide, hey, this is a cheap shot at another vertebrate genome. It's only 300 million bases instead of 3 billion bases to sequence, so they sequence it. Interesting thing, there are no enzymes in that genome. There are no genes for enzymes that can produce tetrodotoxin. Apparently, it's not the fish that make it, it's symbiotic bacteria that live inside them that produce it. Also containing tetrodotoxin. You go down to South and Central America, those lovely little poison dart frogs. The cute little colorful things, many of them are less than 1 inch long, but depending on the species, some of them produce, or actually symbiotic microorganisms on their skin produce tetrodotoxin. The nastiest species called Dendrobates terribilis. Here's a good example of what it's about this long, gold spots and black, and 2 of those frogs could secrete enough toxin to kill everybody in this classroom. And the stuff can get absorbed through the skin, I guess. So that's a nasty kind of thing. And there are many other organisms that produce a whole array of neurotoxins. People are looking at some of these like spider venoms and cone shell venoms because some of them have the potential of specific drugs. There's one that is in late-stage clinical trials that's derived from a cone shell that is a pain reliever that's orders of magnitude more potent than morphine. It does not affect the opiate receptor. It affects something different. It does not appear to have addictive potential like opiates do. You know, half the stuff ends up on the street anyway. This stuff wouldn't. And it can also relieve, preliminary evidence suggests it can relieve certain kinds of pain that even morphine cannot. So, within a few years perhaps, it's going to be out in the market for severe pain or intractable pain. So, once again, using it as a pep talk. Once again, using some of nature's tricks for our benefit. Okay, folks, I will see some of you guys in lab.